My name is Janis Dubno. I am Managing Director at the Sorenson Impact Center. With the generous support from the Tipping Point Fund on Impact Investing, the Sorenson Impact Center developed a white paper series proposing 3 federal policies to unlock catalytic capital in order to scale the impact investing market. Our first proposal is to establish a U.S. domestic investment fund dedicated to the provision of public catalytic capital within an explicit inclusive domestic development mission. Public resources can play a critical role in building the impact investing market. Capital from the domestic investment fund would incentivize and leverage private capital into social impact and inclusive economic growth at greater scale. While existing federal efforts to direct resources to small business and communities, such as the Small Business Administration, the Community Development Financial Institutions Loan Fund, and the Development Finance Corporation, fill important needs, they face limitations in meeting the needs of underserved communities and populations. The Domestic Investment Fund would have greater flexibility with respect to the financial tools they can provide and the organizations and projects that would be eligible for funding. Our next proposal relates to modernizing the Community Reinvestment Act. We propose to expand the CRA to include the non-bank financial sector, define catalytic capital investment as a qualifying activity under CRA, and to define expenditures on technical assistance as a qualifying CRA expenditure in order to support communities. While separately these 3 components could enhance the supply of catalytic capital, enacted together, the impact would be amplified. Our last proposal seeks to incentivize more private investment into social impact through building and scaling the outcomes-based funding market. Despite authorization in multiple federal funding streams to voluntarily use federal funding for outcomes financing, we have not seen significant uptake by states nor the development of an ongoing sustainable market for outcomes-based financing. Our proposal would create a mandatory federal requirement for states to use a small percentage of their new federal formula appropriations for outcomes funding strategies. While the majority of the requirement should be earmarked for outcome payments, we recommend states be allowed to use a portion to build the data infrastructure needed to implement an outcomes funding approach. 3 issue areas that we recommend be considered to implement a mandatory requirement include workforce and youth development, community and family and child development, and criminal justice and substance abuse prevention. To learn more and view the white paper series, please visit our website or feel free to contact me if you would like to discuss these proposals. And now I'd like to introduce Fran Siegel, President of the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance, to discuss the critical link between public policy and impact investing.
Thank you, Janis, for your leadership on this important work, and thanks to the staff and students of the Sorenson Impact Center for their contributions. It's an honor to speak with you today about the intersection of public policy, impact investing, and our collective effort to create a more inclusive economy. My name is Fran Siegel, and I serve as president of the U.S. Impact Investing Alliance, an organization with a vision to place measurable social, economic, and environmental impact at the heart of every investment decision. I also serve as executive director of the Tipping Point Fund on Impact Investing, a donor collaborative working to scale the field by funding critical gaps in the market. And in that capacity, we were proud to support the research of the Sorenson Impact Center related to public policies that help unlock catalytic capital. Rethinking the intersection of public policy and impact investing is especially critical in this current moment, as we witness an historic and global vaccination campaign, and as we begin to contemplate our next normal in the months and years to come, we're still reminded of the many roadblocks ahead. From the challenge of securing an inclusive economic recovery and climate resilience, to the need to address centuries of systemic racism and to reaffirm our democratic institutions. When we speak about our advocacy work at the Alliance, we say that we're seeking to build an enabling public policy environment for impact investing. While this is still the case, in this moment, we must acknowledge the far greater context when so many are fighting for their lives, their livelihoods, and their fundamental human rights. We must approach our work with humility. The private sector alone can't provide the full solutions to the challenges we face, and so government is called on to lead again, in a way not seen in this country for generations. But investors, businesses, and private capital also have a part to play by bringing to bear our strong tools and track record in service of the public good. In particular, we believe there's a critical role for impact investors at the intersection of two broad themes. First, transforming community investing practices to combat inequality. And second, transitioning to an economic system more accountable to all stakeholders. Community investing strategies have been used for decades by investors seeking to catalyze economic development and opportunity in communities otherwise underserved by the broader financial system. As a result, community investing ecosystems have taken root across the country. And it's these networks of local entrepreneurs, nonprofit organizations, lenders, and investors that we must devote our resources to fortifying and scaling. By doing so, we can improve access to capital for Black, Brown, Indigenous, and women entrepreneurs, and ensure that economic development leads to the building of community wealth instead of contributing to further dislocation. For this reason, I'm energized by policy proposals from the Sorenson Impact Center, such as the need to rethink the Community Reinvestment Act. This cornerstone policy emerged from the civil rights movement, and it's catalyzed more than $1 trillion in community development capital. By expanding and enhancing that tool, and by firmly acknowledging its role in combating systemic racism, we can transform how banks and other investors contribute to the rebuilding and future prosperity of local main streets. Here we see a concrete example of how public policy, either by mandate or by incentive, can redirect the flow of private capital for public good. The second theme, a transition to stakeholder capitalism, calls for a reimagined economic system that moves beyond short-termism and shareholder primacy to incentivize long-term and sustainable investment. To compete in the 21st century, we need an economy that values the contributions and considerations of all stakeholders, including workers, communities, and the environment. By ignoring the impact of stakeholders, we have allowed small businesses to fail, infrastructure to crumble, and US industry to deteriorate. These fissures were only made more apparent in light of the COVID-19 crisis, but they've been growing for decades. Repairing this damage demands bold and innovative ideas, such as the Domestic Investment Fund proposed by the Sorenson Impact Center, to marshal both public and private capital to help small businesses as an industry thrive. But stakeholder capitalism also requires greater transparency on the part of investors and on the part of all companies, both public and private. We see this conversation around climate disclosure being elevated at the SEC and throughout the federal government, but it must ultimately extend to address all impact that investment and businesses' decisions have on workers, consumers, and the broader world around them. As you can see, there's a rich set of conversations to be had around the intersection of impact investing and public policy. And that's why the work of the Sorenson Impact Center, both the proposals you heard about earlier and even this impact forum itself, is so important. The Alliance has put forward our own vision for impact investing, public policy making over the next few years, organized around the two themes I mentioned earlier. Our vision was informed by the important work of the Sorenson Impact Center and many others around the country. That report, Private Capital, Public Good, offers 12 recommendations for leveraging impact investing solutions in the recovery. But again, we offer these recommendations as just one part of the broader systemic changes needed at this moment. And we acknowledge that advancing these policies won't be simple and will take a concerted effort across government and the private sector. That's why the Alliance is partnering with B Lab and more than 50 impact-oriented investing and business groups, including Sorenson Impact Center, to form a coalition calling for the White House Initiative on Inclusive Economic Growth. We are looking to create the space for conversations between the public and private sectors to do three things: coordinate policymaking across federal agencies and Congress, leverage business and investor solutions to societal challenges, and ensure that our field has a seat at the table to help shape the future of an inclusive economy. We're excited to see this proposal for a White House initiative on inclusive economic growth resonating with champions on Capitol Hill and in the administration, and we believe it will help drive progress on our shared policy goals of economic, environmental, and racial justice. I encourage any organization interested in adding their voice to these efforts to reach out to the Alliance or B-Lab to learn more about becoming a proposal signatory. To close, as we reflect on a year defined by a contentious presidential election here in the US and seemingly never-ending crises globally, the importance of public policy and government action was made abundantly clear. We must continue to leverage the capital, knowledge, and track record in our toolkit to catalyze durable, transformative change for the communities and investors we care about. As impact investors, we must stand ready to partner with government as they seek to rebuild institutions and mend all that has been broken. By reinvesting in communities and reimagining our economic system, impact investors and business can contribute to the essential conversations of our day. Thank you for the chance to share with you today, and thanks too for all that you do to drive impact.